Chapter 22 of The Finding of Jasper Holt by Grace Livingston Hill. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 22 "Father," said Jean, closing the study door and standing guard in front of it lest her mother enter suddenly and be frightened at what she was saying, "Father, I must go to Hawk Valley at once, to-day. No, it isn't Eleanor, nor any of them," she added hastily, as she saw the quick apprehension in her father's face. "They are all well. I've just had a long letter from Eleanor. Father, it's the man who saved my life. He is dying and he needs me. I know he wants me. I love him, Father, and he loves me. He didn't think you would like him, and so we never said anything about it, but now he's dying and I must go." The look in her eyes and the tilt of her chin were her father's own when he felt he must fulfill some high calling and would not be gainsaid. He knew at a glance that it was useless to try to stop her. Besides, he had all confidence in her. "I see, daughter," he said with instant comprehension and a swift vision of what the wistfulness in her face had meant all these long months. "How soon can you be ready? There is a train at 6, I think." "I will be ready, father." And then, turning, laid her head for an instant on his shoulder and hid her face in his neck. "Oh, father, dear!" He folded her close and kissed her. "Courage, daughter. Trust in our Father's tenderness." "Thank you so much, father, for understanding," she said, lifting her eyes to his face. "Do you want me to go with you, daughter?" he asked, trying to think how it would be possible. "No, father, you couldn't. You have that funeral tomorrow, and they need you," she answered, drying her tears. "And then it wouldn't do to leave mother. No, I can go alone perfectly well. Here is Eleanor's letter. Read it with mother. That will explain a good deal. I will tell you more on the way to the station. He is the one who won the laurel wreath at the tournament. I told you a little about him." "Yes, I know. I understand. Poor little child. Now go quickly, and I will explain to your mother about it. You haven't much time. Don't try to pack more than a suitcase. We can send your trunk on after you." There are not many fathers so wise as this one, who seemed to know without asking just what was needed, who refrained from needless questions, calmed the frail mother's fears, and helped his girl away to her pain or her rejoicing as it should prove to be, with a blessing upon her as she left. It was in the sunset gloaming that she arrived in Hawk Valley, and the gold of the sky lay behind the hills, ruby-lined, like the gold of Jasper Holt's roses, whose sweet withered leaves lay stored among her linen in her bureau drawer at home. They met her at the station, for a telegram had heralded her coming. Quietly, with hushed voices, they met her, for Death waited beside the couch in the guest room of their home, and they had guessed how it must be between these two. "He seems to be sleeping his life away," said Eleanor, folding a cloak about her sister, for she saw that it was going hard with her. "They cannot rouse him. He seems content to go. He does not want to live. It is strange with one so strong and young." The light of battle came into the younger sister's eyes, but she answered nothing. "Better come and get something to eat first," said Eleanor when they reached the house, but Jean shook her head and fled up the stairs. There could not have been anything quieter than the way she opened the door and slipped into that room. Her very garments seemed to cling and hush about her as she walked. But he opened his eyes at once. A strange, wondering look came into them as she came across the room and knelt beside him with a smile. Then she bowed her head and laid her lips upon his. The doctors and the nurse who stood by were as nothing. They were just these two in the universe, and all else was hushed. So she moved about his room, or sat close beside his couch. She was there when he woke in the night, and looked at her, murmuring very low, "Are you real or a dream?" "I'm real, dear. I will not go away," she breathed, and laid her soft lips on his again. This time his own responded feebly. It was in the morning that the doctors said there was hope, though they confessed afterward that recovery began with his first sight of Jean's face. Jean scarcely left his side day or night, and seemed tireless. Often she slept on a low stool beside the bed, with her head against his pillow. One bright morning he awoke to find her sleeping so, and laid his weak, uncertain hand softly upon her head. She opened her eyes, met his smile, and knew that he was better. "A life for a life," he said softly. "Dear, you must go to your bed and rest. I will get well now. You are killing yourself." But her smile shone forth radiantly. "I couldn't rest away from you," she said, giving him a dazzling look. "I'm not going to leave you any more ever." Then she paused and looked shyly up again. "Unless," she added archly, "unless you've changed your mind and don't want me. In that case I'll go back home as soon as you are able to be out." "Oh, my dear," he said softly, and drew her down to his breast with his one good arm. "Do you mean it? Not leave me again ever? Are you willing to be my wife? Can you really trust me now?" "I've trusted you always," she said softly, nestling her face against his cheek. "I trusted you the first time I saw you." "But your people, Jean?" "My people all love you and honor you," said Jean with shining eyes. "They think you are magnificent. They can't say enough about you. Eleanor would bow down and kiss your feet, and my father and mother know all about you, and have sent me to you willingly. But Jasper, listen. If everyone in this wide world were against you, even my dear people, I should marry you anyway and stay with you. I couldn't live any longer without you." He looked into her eyes, and he drank in her trust and loveliness and beautiful self-surrender as if it had been some life-giving draught. Then he laid his hand upon her hair and pressed her closer to him. "Oh, you wonderful woman," he said. It did not take Jasper Holt long to get well after that. Hope and joy shone in his eyes so that his face was dazzling to look upon, and those who came into his room walked softly, filled with awe, that a man who had come and gone among them for years and had been held almost in contempt, could have within him a soul so great and noble as to shine like that in his face. Jean's father and mother came west for a visit about that time, for Jean wrote that there was no use expecting her to return now, and when the two met, Jean's father and her lover, and stood hand in hand, looking into one another's eyes for a full, long minute before either spoke, each felt entirely satisfied. Of course, all this could not go on without the town knowing something of the state of things, for everybody came to find out how the hero was getting on, and Jasper Holt's men, as they came and went in grave concern, were beset with questions. And when Jean arrived, then her parents, the town opened eyes of understanding and nodded gravely, thinking it was well. So when it was announced most informally that a wedding would take place, no one was surprised. Indeed, Jean's girl friends had been embroidering and chattering away over wedding gifts for a week before it was whispered officially that they would be needed. Once more the Harrington house was smothered in flowers for Jean. Gifts came from far and near, from all her old admirers who were now also with one consent become Holt's admirers. But the flowers that Jean carried in her arms when she came down the stairs, white-clad and smiling, to meet her bridegroom, were great golden sunset roses, gathered by Holt's faithful men for her, and among the guests were all those men, 54 of them, standing grim and embarrassed outside the door to watch their leader stand among the flowers and take his beautiful girl bride by the hand. It was sunset again, gold and ruby sunset, when they went home to his house after the wedding supper. The sky was broad and clear translucent gold, with a deep heart of pure ruby blazing out behind the rose-wreathed cottage when Jean saw it for the first time. The roses hung in heavy-headed wealth about the doorway, and the men stood double-ranked each side of the path. They had decked the house for her coming, those rough men who loved her Lord, with boughs of sweet-smelling branches, heaped up blazing logs in the big stone fireplace, and sand strewn the floor all clean and fresh. There, alone at last together in their own home, they stood with ruby and golden light from the sunset windows mingling with the soft flicker of firelight, and looked into each other's eyes, and knew that their Heavenly Father had been good to them. End of chapter 22. End of The Finding of Jasper Holt by Grace Livingston Hill. Thanks for listening.